Good morning, and thank you to the AAPA Latino Congress for the invitation to Miami. Usually this time of year I get invitations to Alaska, so it's a nice change. Now, I'm going to kind of dance a little bit around this presentation because I just realized from these two very learned individuals that an ex-merchant mariner, now a lawyer, almost failed economics at the academy and doesn't understand graphics. So you can only imagine where these presentations left me, although I could follow the general trends, for sure. Mine has no economics and no graphics. Mine is a simple maritime version of what I see this business. Now, the first thing you should be asking, what is a ship person doing at a ports conference? We need each other. For us to be successful in the future, whether it's economic, environmental, social, we need each other. Not one ship. You don't need just one ship, but the global industry of ships and the global industry of ports. And the only way we're going to get to where we need to get is to talk. To talk vertically, to talk horizontally, to figure out what we can do together, and to communicate. We no longer have the ability to just talk within our sector. You know, that logistics chain, that smooth logistics chain with no bumps and no seams in it, we've got to get rid of those. Those seams still exist. We all know that. Not on purpose, but because it's just more comfortable to stay in your sector. It's more comfortable for me to talk to you about ships than it is for me to talk about port throughput. I've got to get smarter so I can talk with you. I told Chris I'm going to save some time here. I put these down. There's nobody here that's uninitiated. You all know who the stakeholders are. There's probably some that's not even on there. Most important one to think about is the consumer. Because in some of the graphs that I saw in the last presentation, although I have to admit I'm not fluent in Spanish, but I could kind of read the graphs, we're building bigger ships than we got ports for. And I'm sure for those of you that know a little bit about American baseball, which I'm sure you do, there's an old saying, if you build it, they will come. Well, they, with 50-foot drafts, will not come in a 30-foot port. So somehow there's got to be better coordination with that. This is a very busy slide. What I was going to show you, half of this you're probably already aware of as an active AAPA member, and that's the World Port Sustainability Program. AAPA, European Seaports, you can read it. I'm not going to create injury on you by just reading a PowerPoint slide. But what you may not know about is the Global Industry Alliance, which is part of the IMO GLOMEET program, which is also bringing ports in. And the first question I had when I figured out what I was going to talk about here was, when I found these two programs, I had to ask myself, why do two separate programs exist for what looks like to be the same goals? Maybe they need to talk. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but I'm saying they both look like they're trying to get the whole synthesis of the logistics chain together to solve problems. Objectives and themes with the World Ports thing: resilient infrastructure, climate change, outreach, safety, security, governance and ethics. The GIA themes: digitalization, alternative fuels, finance, human element, energy efficiency. I don't see anything on either of those two lists that both of our sectors shouldn't be concerned about and see as challenges for the future. Examples of today's challenges: port and waterway development. Where's the money? How do we drive drafts in ports deep enough for the mega ships. And I'm not just talking about container ships, I'm talking about bulk and tanker ships as well. In the U.S., we've had an interesting discussion on short sea shipping. Now, I can never say this, there's too many S's in it. Short sea shipping makes a whole lot of sense in Europe with the waterway structure that's in Europe. But it doesn't necessarily make sense in other marine configurations. We've had discussions in the United States about short sea shipping, how it could work. We've got a couple big deep draft ports on the East Coast, but a lot of the ports are not. What about the concept of a hub versus a feeder port? Great idea. That big boats come in, small feeder ships go out to the nearby ports where it makes economic sense. You've got a system. The problem is, with my friends in the ports, nobody wants to be a feeder port. Everybody wants to be a hub port. We've got to overcome that. And then we've got to look at the economies of scale versus existing or future infrastructure and market demands. The consumer's driving the need for the intermodal system, of which your ports and my ships are a part. So if the marketplace is not demanding a 28,000 TEU ship, should we be building it? All because we can? I'm not answering the question. These guys can answer that question, but I just throw it out. Perfect example of how we can work together, and we are dead in the middle of all this right now. In fact, last week, the 6th meeting of the IMO Greenhouse Gas Working Group went off, and there was broad discussions on how the shipping industry can reduce our GHG footprint. Well, I know you're having the same discussions nationally and locally within your port areas. How can you reduce your GHG footprint? A lot of times we can do it together. And in fact, for us to be successful, we have to do it together. Secretary General Lem of IMO, there's a quote on there, "Transport's a chain, no link can be effective if viewed in isolation." I'll take that one step further. The chain is only as good as its weakest link. So we all have to kind of make sure our links are compatible with one another. Resolution. Resolutions are boring, I know, so I just got the important stuff out. Some ideas about how ports and shipping can cooperate on the global level. Incentive schemes. A lot of ports are already doing that right now. Encourage cooperation with ports, bunker suppliers. I mean, we come to your port, we want to use a low carbon or zero carbon, neutral carbon fuel, but there's no fuel there. Why? Because there's not an infrastructure. So you say, well, we didn't know you needed the infrastructure. Why didn't you tell us? We need to talk so we can see opportunities for the future to not only reach these goals, but to do it in a way that makes sense for all the business links in that chain. Review of issue, there's 3 documents, and if those of you are not aware of it, you can look them up on the International Maritime Organization, IMO website. One is efficiency measures for ships while they're in port areas, things you can do. Cold ironing, for example. Slow speed in port areas. I mentioned, well, shore power. So that's the ship side. But there are also 2 documents. One focuses on the development of a port emissions assessment, which I'm sure most of you have already done. And the second one is, once you do that emissions assessment, a list of strategies that could be employed all the way through the facilities, out through the highways, out through the rail. I will admit to you, if you start to read these at night, you will fall fast asleep. So you really want to start reading them sometime in the morning. But there's good stuff in there if you can wade through all the words. So here's all the stuff we're talking about. Does anybody disagree with anything on that chart? other than the fact the resolution is lousy and it's blurry. I mean, this is all what we want for today and for tomorrow for our kids and for our grandkids. It doesn't have to be this bad. And no, this is not an advertisement for wind energy. We can get there, but we're going to have to do it together. And that's the last side. Thank you very much.